In the heart of a shining human colony, under the cold lights of a futuristic laboratory, a young man lay on a scanning bed while machines hummed around him. His name was Kale, and like every new recruit, he had to pass through the genetic test before entering the interstellar fleet. The test was simple. The scanner would read his DNA, confirm his species profile, and store it in the central system. Everyone before him had matched perfectly, human, pure, and standard. But as the scanner touched his skin, the room filled with strange beeps, the hologram stuttered, and then the result appeared: no species alive. The words glowed in crimson letters, hanging in the air like a death sentence. The scientists froze. No one had ever seen such a result. For a moment, there was silence, only the soft hum of the machines. Then the chief scientist leaned forward and ran the test again, his hands trembling. Once more, the system refused to classify Kale as human. Instead, the hologram shifted and projected something impossible, a skeletal structure that did not belong to man, beast, or alien. It was a massive creature, with wings that stretched wider than a starship, a skull lined with sharp teeth, and long, curved bones that hinted at both power and terror. The scientist whispered one word, a word that did not belong in the vocabulary of science but in the language of myth: dragon. The guards in the room exchanged nervous looks. Dragons were ancient legends, stories told to children, creatures no one believed had ever walked the stars. Fossils had been found buried deep under alien soil centuries ago, but historians called them mistakes, misread bones of extinct species. Yet the machine did not lie. Kale's DNA matched not with humanity, not with any species alive, but with the fossil records of dragons. As the room buzzed with disbelief, Kale sat up slowly, his pulse racing in his ears. He did not understand the fear on their faces, nor why the guards' hands moved to their weapons. His chest burned, his skin prickled as if fire lived beneath it, and deep inside, a strange whisper echoed in his mind. The scientist stepped back, pointing at him as though he were a monster. "This should not exist," the man said. "This is not possible. You are a danger." Kale's heart hammered. He wanted to protest, to say he was just human, just like anyone else, but the way the guards raised their rifles told him no words would matter. The scanner flickered again, and Kale saw it this time. The holographic skeleton shifted into flesh and scales, shimmering with ghostly light. A creature of fire and wings hovered above him, a vision of something long dead, something that should not exist in this sterile, futuristic age. For a moment, the dragon's eyes glowed in the hologram, and Kale felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if something inside him had awakened. He gasped, clutching his shirt, while the scientists scrambled to shut down the machine. The air smelled faintly of smoke, though nothing burned. One guard muttered, "What is he?" Another answered in a low voice, "Not human." That was the moment Kale understood his life had changed. He was no longer one of them. They would not see him as a man anymore, but as something strange, something feared, something that did not belong. The soldiers moved forward, surrounding him, ready to drag him away to whatever prison they used for the unknown. Panic gripped him, but beneath the fear there was something else. Heat, like a living flame under his skin, pressing to escape. His breath quickened, and for a heartbeat the air around his mouth glowed faintly red, as though fire wanted to slip through his lips. The chief scientist shouted for containment, his voice sharp with both terror and excitement, as if he were looking not at a prisoner but at history itself. Kale felt the walls closing in, the stares of everyone marking him as different, as cursed. The whispers in his mind grew louder, words he could not understand but filled with power, ancient and commanding. He clenched his fists, shaking, and the metal restraints on the scanning bed grew hot under his touch, glowing faint orange before cooling again. Gasps filled the room. Nothing about this was normal. Kale realized that if he stayed, he would never be free again. He would be a specimen, locked away in some cage, cut open in the name of science. He looked at the door, at the guards, at the red glow still hanging in the hologram that labeled him as no species alive, and he felt the terrifying certainty of his situation. Whatever he was, the humans around him would never accept it. Somewhere deep inside, something older than memory stirred, something that felt both dangerous and powerful. For the first time in his life, Kale wondered if he truly was human, or if the test had revealed the truth of what he really was. Kale could still feel the burning in his chest long after the scanners went dark. The words, "no species alive," had not vanished from his mind. Even as guards dragged him down the sterile corridor, he saw flashes of wings, of scales shimmering like molten steel, of fire breaking through darkness. He tried to tell himself it was a hallucination, a trick of the machine, but the heat in his veins told a different story. They locked him in a containment chamber. Clear walls, bright lights, cameras in every corner. It looked less like a prison and more like a zoo, built for something dangerous, something not human. Kale sat on the metal bench, his hands clenched tight, trying to control the strange pulses running through his body. Outside, voices whispered, scientists in white coats arguing while officers stood ready with weapons. He caught fragments through the glass. This is impossible. Dragons never existed. The fossil records say otherwise. Fossils are myths, legends. We're scientists, not storytellers. Then came the word that chilled him. Weapon. They wanted to use him, not understand him. He leaned his head against the glass, feeling like a specimen trapped in a cage, but inside his chest, the fire pulsed stronger, as if reacting to their fear. Hours passed before the door opened. A woman entered, her hair pulled back, her eyes sharp behind the glow of her visor. She did not carry a weapon, only a data slate. "My name is Dr. Elara," she said calmly. "Do you know what you are?" Kale shook his head. "I'm human. I've always been human." Her gaze was steady, almost pitying. "The test says otherwise. Your DNA. It matches with fossils found on a dead world centuries ago. Bones of creatures we believed were only myths. Dragons. If this is true, then you are not only different, you are something humanity has never seen alive." He laughed bitterly, though there was no humor in it. "So I'm a ghost from a story?" She did not answer. Instead, she showed him the hologram, the dragon's bones, towering, majestic. "These fossils were thought to be mistakes, but the system doesn't lie. You are part of them. Or perhaps, the last of them." Her voice dropped, serious now. "And if dragons were real, if they walked the galaxy once, then we must ask why they disappeared." Kale's skin prickled. He remembered the visions in the scanner, the whispering in his mind. "What happened to them?" he asked softly. Dr. Elara shook her head. "We don't know. The records are fragments. But there are stories that something hunted them, something strong enough to wipe them out." Kale felt his heart pound. He wanted to dismiss it as myth, but deep down, a strange certainty grew inside him. Something had indeed killed them, and whatever it was not gone. Suddenly, the lights in the chamber flickered. The cameras buzzed, then died. Kale felt a pressure in his head, a deep vibration that did not come from the machines. His chest tightened, his breath turning hot. Elara's eyes widened. "You feel it, don't you?" she whispered. "It's not just DNA. It's something alive inside you. Something ancient." Before Kale could reply, the guards stormed in, their weapons raised. "Step away from the subject," one barked. Elara snapped, "He is not a subject, he is sentient." But her protest was useless. The soldiers moved closer, their eyes hard, their fingers tight on their triggers. Kale backed against the wall, his heart racing. He could feel the fire crawling up his throat now, begging to escape. "Don't," he whispered to himself, but the heat only grew. One guard reached for him, and in that instant, the fire burst. Not a flame, not yet, but a wave of scorching heat that blasted outward, melting the guard's weapon and sending the others stumbling back. Alarms screamed. Smoke filled the chamber. Kale gasped, terrified of himself, his hands glowing faint orange before cooling. The soldiers shouted, "Contain him! Now!" Elara grabbed his arm, her voice fierce. "Kale, listen to me, you are not a monster. But if you stay here, they will turn you into one. You have to run. Run." The word pierced his panic. He looked at the door, half broken from the blast of heat. The fire in his chest pulsed again, guiding him. Without thinking, he pushed forward, slamming into the door. It burst open under his strength, metal warping like thin plastic. The corridor beyond stretched into blinding light. Sirens howled through the colony as soldiers gave chase. Cale ran, his bare feet slamming against the cold floor, his breath leaving trails of smoke. People turned to stare as he passed, their eyes wide with fear. Some shouted for him to stop, others simply fled. He saw his reflection in the glass walls, a young man with eyes glowing faintly red, smoke curling from his lips. He barely recognized himself. Behind him, Ilara's voice echoed through the speakers of the facility. "Do not kill him. He is not an enemy." But the pounding boots told Cale otherwise. To them, he was already an enemy, something unknown, something dangerous. As he burst into the open air of the colony dome, Cale saw the stars above, sharp and endless, and for a brief moment, he felt the whisper inside him grow louder, clearer. It was not words but feelings: freedom, fire, flight. He stumbled forward, gasping, his body trembling under the weight of the power inside him. He had escaped the test, but not the truth. The truth was inside his blood, older than humanity, older than the colony, older than the stars themselves. And whatever it was waking. Cale ran until his lungs ached and his legs threatened to give way, the sound of alarms fading behind him, replaced only by the pounding of his heartbeat. He had escaped the lab, but freedom did not feel like freedom at all. The colony dome stretched around him, a sprawling city of steel towers, neon lights, and restless crowds, yet every shadow felt hostile, every glance aimed at him burned with suspicion. His reflection followed him in the transparent walls, his eyes glowing faintly with ember light, smoke trailing from his lips whenever his breath grew heavy. He tried to hide in the dark alleys, pulling the hood of an abandoned worker's coat over his head, but even then, the whispers in his mind refused to stop. The same strange voice he had heard in the scanner returned, low and ancient, a rumble like distant thunder. It was not speech, not exactly, but Cale felt meaning in it: awaken, remember, survive. He pressed his hands to his ears, desperate to silence it, but the fire in his chest flared as if laughing at his attempt to resist. For hours he wandered the back streets, avoiding the patrol drones sweeping through the skies. Military transports roared overhead, their floodlights cutting through the night as the order spread: find him, contain him, destroy him if necessary. Cale had always been a nobody, another face in the crowd, but now he was a hunted creature. The colony itself seemed to turn against him. His face appeared on holoscreens across the city with a warning label: dangerous, subject not human. He froze when he saw it, the words like knives piercing whatever identity he had left. Not human. No longer one of them. He slipped into an abandoned maintenance tunnel, his hands trembling, and collapsed against the cold wall. The air smelled of rust and damp, but it was quiet here, hidden. For a moment, he let himself breathe. That was when Dr. Ilara appeared again. She stepped out of the shadows, her visor dimmed, her white coat replaced by a dark cloak. Cale tensed, ready to fight or flee, but her voice was steady, urgent. You cannot stay here. They will not stop until you are caught. Or killed. His throat tightened. Why help me? You saw what I did. I almost burned them alive. Ilara's expression softened, though her eyes were sharp with determination. You are not the threat, Cale. The threat is what killed your kind long ago. If dragons existed once, then something destroyed them. And I think that something is coming back. The words chilled him more than the cold metal wall. He wanted to deny it, but the voice in his head pulsed again, echoing her fear, as if confirming it. He shook his head. I don't even know what I am. I can't control this. Ilara crouched beside him. That's why you must learn. If you run blindly, the military will catch you. But if you harness what's inside you, you may not only survive, you may be the only one who can protect us. Cale laughed bitterly. Protect the people who already see me as a monster? Ilara's jaw tightened. Fear is not the same as hatred. Right now, they don't understand you. But if the old stories are true, when the enemy returns, humanity will need you more than they know. Before he could answer, the tunnel trembled with heavy footsteps and metallic clanging. Patrol units had traced them. Ilara grabbed his hand, pulling him deeper into the shadows. "No time," she whispered. Kale's heart hammered as armored soldiers poured into the tunnel, their visors glowing, their rifles raised. Red targeting lasers cut through the dark, locking onto him. A voice thundered from a speaker. "Kale, you are under arrest. Surrender, or be terminated." Kale froze, fear clawing at him, but then the fire within surged again. His chest burned, his throat glowed. The whisper in his mind grew sharp now, urgent. "Fight." The soldiers advanced, weapons charged. One fired a stun blast, a crackling beam of energy that struck Kale's shoulder. Pain shot through him, but instead of falling, the fire inside erupted. Flames burst from his hands, not wild and uncontrolled this time, but sharp, focused, like streams of liquid fire cutting through the air. The tunnel filled with heat, the walls glowing red. The soldiers staggered back, their armor melting at the edges. Kale roared, a sound deeper than his own voice, echoing like a beast awakening after centuries of sleep. The soldiers broke formation, retreating under the onslaught. Drones swooped in from above, but Kale's fire swatted them down like flies, explosions rocking the tunnel. Smoke filled the space, the stench of burning metal and ozone overwhelming. When the fire dimmed, Kale collapsed to his knees, shaking, his chest heaving. Ilara stared at him, awe and fear mixing in her eyes. "Do you see now?" she whispered. "You are not weak. You are awakening." Kale looked at his hands, the skin still glowing faintly, smoke rising from his fingertips. He felt both horror and exhilaration. He had fought back, not with desperation, but with power. Real power. For the first time, the whisper in his mind was not terrifying, it was steady, proud. Outside the tunnel, alarms blared louder, reinforcements on their way. Ilara placed a hand on his shoulder. "We have to go. There is a place, a hidden archive. It holds records about the dragons, their rise and their fall. If we can reach it, you'll find answers. Maybe even control." Kale nodded weakly, though doubt gnawed at him. Could he really trust himself not to destroy everything around him? Could he be more than the monster the colony believed him to be? As they slipped deeper into the shadows, the city above burned with fear, soldiers spread across every street, and the people whispered about the boy who was not human. Kale knew one thing for certain now. He was no longer the hunted boy who had entered a test. He was something else, something rising, and the galaxy was about to remember what had been lost. The hidden archive was nothing like Kale had imagined. After hours of moving through abandoned service tunnels and forgotten cargo routes, Ilara finally led him to a chamber buried deep beneath the colony's oldest structures. The doors were ancient, their surface etched with symbols that glowed faintly when Kale drew near, as if they recognized him. He reached out, and the metal slid open without a sound, welcoming him. Inside, the archive stretched like a cathedral of shadows and light. Holographic stars floated above circular platforms, fragments of history stored in crystalline data cores. The air felt heavy, filled with an energy Kale could not explain. It was as though the walls themselves were alive, remembering. Ilara guided him to the central platform. "This place was sealed long before the colony expanded," she whispered. "Officially, it doesn't exist. But I found records that pointed here. Records that spoke of the dragons." Kale's heart pounded as he stepped onto the platform. The crystals lit up, flooding the room with ghostly images. Vast wings blazed across the holograms, enormous creatures soaring through alien skies, their scales gleaming like living fire. Cities rose and fell under their shadows, not in terror but in awe. Humans were not present in these visions. Instead, other ancient races knelt in reverence. Kale's breath caught in his throat. They were beautiful, terrible, impossible, and yet something inside him whispered that he belonged among them. "They were real," Ilara said softly. "Not myths. Guardians." protectors of whole systems. The fossils we found were only fragments, but this, she gestured at the vast images. This is truth. Kale could not look away. He felt the fire in his chest pulse in rhythm with the holograms, as though his body resonated with the long-dead creatures. But then the images shifted. The skies darkened, fleets of alien warships tearing through stars. The dragons roared, their fire searing through the void, but the enemy was endless, relentless. Beams of energy cut through wings, shattered bones. One by one, the dragons fell, their bodies burning across alien worlds. Kale felt the pain in his own chest, sharp and suffocating, as if he had lived their death himself. He staggered, clutching his ribs, his vision swimming with fire and blood. The archive spoke in an ancient tongue, and though Kale had never heard the language, the meaning came clear in his mind. The hunters came. They would not stop until we were gone. Ilara's face was pale, her voice tight. Hunters. Whatever they were, they exterminated the dragons. That's why they vanished. Kale shook his head, his voice rough. Not vanished. Erased. Wiped out. The holograms showed the last stand of the dragons, an enormous beast with wings that blotted out the stars, its fire burning entire fleets before it fell, pierced by spears of alien energy. The vision faded, leaving only silence. Kale sank to his knees, trembling. They died fighting. Ilara crouched beside him, her expression grim. And if the archive is right, they may return. Whatever destroyed them once could come again. Maybe it already has. Kale's mind reeled. The whispers inside him grew louder now, not just sounds but fragments of memory, feelings that were not his own. He saw flashes of battle, fire spilling from his jaws, wings cutting through the void. He felt the rage of being hunted, the sorrow of extinction, the loneliness of the last. He gasped, shaking his head. These aren't just stories. They're memories. I can feel them. Ilara stared at him, her eyes wide. You're not just carrying their DNA. You're carrying their legacy. Their instincts, their will, maybe even their power. Kale's hands trembled as he looked at them. For a moment, his skin shimmered, scales flickering like shadows beneath the surface. He clenched his fists and the vision faded, but the truth remained. He was not human, not fully. He was something more, something older. The chamber suddenly shook, dust falling from the ceiling. Ilara looked up sharply. They've tracked us. Kale's heart clenched. Already he could hear the rumble of machinery above, the metallic footsteps of soldiers descending. He turned back to the archive, desperate. There has to be more, something they left behind. A weapon. A message. The crystals flared once more, casting the chamber in red light. A final hologram ignited, showing a star map, marked with a single burning system far from the colony. Words echoed in Kale's mind. Sanctuary. The last fire sleeps. He did not know what it meant, but he felt its pull, deep in his bones. Before he could study it further, the chamber doors burst open. Soldiers poured in, weapons raised, their visors glowing in the dim light. Step away from the device, one shouted. Kale rose to his feet, his chest burning hot, the fire ready to burst. Ilara stepped in front of him, her arms raised. Wait. He is not your enemy. You don't understand. He may be the only chance we have if the hunters return. But the soldiers did not lower their weapons. To them, Kale was still just a threat, a monster in human skin. Kale's hands curled into fists, smoke rising from his palms. He could feel the ancient voices urging him to fight, to burn, to rise like the dragons before him. His heart pounded as the room filled with the tension of a storm about to break. He was no longer running from the truth. He was standing in it, fire waiting in his veins, and for the first time, he wondered if he was not the end of the dragons, but their beginning. The colony sky had never looked so dark. Kale stood on the rooftop of a half-ruined tower, his breath coming in ragged bursts, the city sprawling beneath him in fear and chaos. Sirens wailed, searchlights cut across the night, and patrol ships circled like vultures. He had seen the truth in the archive, the memories of dragons slaughtered by the hunters, and the map that pointed toward a distant system where the last fire sleeps. But before he could even think about reaching it, humanity had turned against him. To them, he was not a savior but a danger too great to ignore. Ilara crouched behind him, scanning the skies with her visor. "They're mobilizing more troops," she said grimly. "Not just soldiers. Look." Kale followed her gaze. Across the city's perimeter, massive shapes rose into the air. Military warships, sleek and silver, their cannons glowing with power. The colony fleet was preparing for war. "Against me?" Kale asked bitterly. Ilara shook her head. "Not only you. Something else is happening. I intercepted a transmission on the way here, unknown vessels entering the system. They're not ours." Kale's stomach tightened. Unknown vessels. The word pulsed in his mind with the same dread he had felt in the archive. "The hunters," he whispered. The night split apart with thunder as the alien ships descended from orbit. Black as obsidian, sharp as blades, their hulls shimmered with a light that seemed alive. The colony fleet rose to meet them, cannons firing, missiles streaking across the void. The sky erupted in chaos, explosions scattering across the stars. But the alien ships moved with terrible grace, weaving through the fire, tearing human vessels apart with spears of energy that burned like lightning. People in the city screamed as debris rained down, towers crumbling under the bombardment. Kale's heart pounded. This was not just history repeating, it was happening now. The hunters had returned, and humanity was already falling. Ilara's voice shook as she grabbed his arm. "Do you understand now? You are not their enemy, you are their only chance. If the dragons fought them before, then you must fight them now." Kale's hands trembled. He wanted to refuse, to run, to deny the fire burning in his chest. But as he looked at the sky, at the ships tearing through human defenses, he knew there was no choice. The whispers in his head roared louder than ever, no longer just urging but commanding, "Rise. Burn. Fight." Kale closed his eyes and let go. The fire inside surged forward, no longer chained, no longer hidden. His body shuddered, his skin glowing with molten light. Flames erupted around him, not consuming but transforming. His arms stretched, his back split open, wings of fire and bone unfurled into the night. His roar shook the city, a sound that belonged not to a man but to something far older, something the galaxy had forgotten. Soldiers below froze in terror as the figure on the rooftop became something else, a dragon reborn, scales glowing like forged steel, eyes burning like twin suns. Kale leapt into the sky, wings beating against the storm, fire trailing in his wake. The alien ships turned their weapons toward him, but he did not flinch. The first beam lanced toward him, a spear of burning energy. He roared and spat fire, a stream so bright it cut through the beam itself and struck the alien hull. The ship burst apart in a blossom of molten shards, raining fire across the void. Humanity's soldiers, watching from the ground, stood frozen in disbelief. The boy they had hunted, the one their machines had labeled, "no species alive," was fighting not against them but for them. Kale tore through the sky, his fire blasting apart drone swarms, his claws ripping into alien armor. For the first time, he felt no fear of what he was. He felt power, freedom, destiny. The aliens responded with fury. Dozens of ships swarmed him, their beams converging, striking his wings, his chest. Pain tore through him, but the fire inside refused to die. He pushed harder, the flames surging from his body until the air itself seemed to ignite around him. With a single beat of his wings, he unleashed a wave of fire that consumed the fleet around him, burning ships to cinders. Below, people cheered and wept, their fear turning to awe. Kale was no monster. He was their shield. But even as victory bloomed, Ilara's warning voice echoed in his mind. "These are only the first wave," she had said. And she was right. The largest alien vessel descended from orbit, a leviathan that blotted out the stars. Its hull pulsed with living light, its weapons glowing brighter than suns. Kale hovered in the sky, his wings trembling, his body scarred from battle. He stared at the monstrous ship and knew this was not over. This was only the beginning. The whispers inside him grew steady, resolute. You are the last. You are the flame. Kale spread his wings wide, fire coursing through his veins. Below, humanity looked to him, no longer as prey but as hope. Above, the hunters unleashed their wrath. And between them stood Kale, the last dragon, ready to decide the fate of an entire world. The alien Leviathan hung above the colony like a second moon, its massive hull bristling with weapons that glowed brighter with every passing second. Kale hovered in the air before it, wings of flame stretching wide, his body trembling from exhaustion but burning with power. Below him the colony lay in ruins, smoke curling from shattered towers, the cries of frightened people echoing through the broken streets. Humanity had thrown everything at the hunters and failed. Now the last of the dragons, reborn in Kale, was all that stood between survival and extinction. The ship's cannons charged, filling the sky with a low hum that vibrated through Kale's bones. He could feel the sheer weight of it, a weapon that could erase the colony in one strike. His fire might have destroyed smaller ships, but this vessel was not prey. This was a predator, the same kind that had ended his kind before. The whispers in his head surged, no longer fragments but a chorus of voices, ancient and fierce. We fell before them. Do not fall again. You are the last fire. Burn brighter than us all. Kale's chest tightened. He had never felt so small, yet never so alive. He roared, a sound that cracked the air, and hurled himself at the Leviathan. Beams of searing light lanced toward him. He twisted through the air, his wings beating hard, the edges burning as blasts clipped him. Pain seared through his side, but he answered with fire, torrents of flame erupting from his throat, slamming into the alien hull. The ship shuddered but did not fall. Its armor absorbed his fury like stone against rain. On the ground, Elara watched through the smoke, her heart racing. Soldiers who had once hunted Kale now stood frozen in awe, their weapons lowered. He's fighting for us, someone whispered. The boy, he's protecting us. Hope flickered among them like a fragile flame. Kale circled the Leviathan, searching for weakness. Then he saw it, glowing vents along the ship's spine, pulsing in rhythm with its weapons. A core, maybe, or something worse. He banked sharply and dived, fire trailing behind him like a comet. The Leviathan reacted, unleashing swarms of drones that poured from its sides, metallic insects shrieking through the void. They swarmed him, claws raking, beams scorching. Kale roared in fury, spinning, tearing through them with claws and fire. His wings sliced drones apart, his tail smashed them to pieces, but their numbers seemed endless. The Leviathan's main cannon reached full charge. A beam wider than a city tower erupted downward, straight toward the colony. Kale's eyes widened in horror. He dove, putting himself between the cannon and the people below. Fire burst from his chest, his entire body glowing like molten steel as he met the beam head-on. The impact was blinding. Pain like nothing he had ever known tore through him, but he refused to move. His wings stretched wide, his roar shaking the heavens, and for a moment it seemed as if the fire of an entire species burned through him. The beam split around his body, diverted, tearing harmlessly into the mountains beyond the colony. The people below gasped. The last dragon was shielding them. Kale staggered in the air, smoke rising from his scales, but the whispers in his head urged him onward. He banked again, his body aflame, and slammed into the Leviathan's spine. His claws sank deep into alien metal, his fire blasting into the glowing vents. The ship convulsed, its hull shuddering as explosions ripped through its core. Kale roared and poured everything he had into one final inferno. His fire turned white-hot, brighter than the sun, searing through armor, through engines, through the heart of the ship itself. The Leviathan screamed, not with sound but with vibrations that shook the stars. Then it split apart in a storm of fire and shattered metal. The sky lit up as the alien flagship fell, burning into pieces that rained harmlessly into space. Kale hovered amid the wreckage, his body trembling, his wings tattered and smoking. He had won. Humanity had survived. Below, the people erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the broken city. Soldiers dropped their weapons, some even falling to their knees in reverence. They had seen what the machines could not name. Kale was not their enemy. He was their protector, the last of a legacy they had forgotten. Ilara looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. "You truly are the last dragon." But Kale felt no triumph. As the debris burned in the sky, he felt the whispers in his head fade, one by one, until silence remained. The ancient voices were gone. He was alone now, the only flame left in a galaxy that had once known fire. His heart ached with the weight of it. Slowly, he descended, his body shrinking, the fire dimming until he stood once more as a man upon the rooftop. His knees buckled, and Ilara rushed forward, catching him. He looked into her eyes, his own glowing faintly still. "They'll come again," he said hoarsely. "The hunters never stop." Ilara's voice was steady. "Then we'll be ready. Because now we have you." Kale shook his head, staring at the stars. "No. You don't have me. The galaxy does. I can't stay here. I'm not human anymore. I never was." He looked out across the ruins of the colony, at the faces staring up at him with awe and fear. He understood now. He was not meant to live among them. He was meant to protect them, to be the fire against the darkness. Wings of flame flickered once more at his back. He rose into the sky, higher and higher, until the colony shrank beneath him and the stars stretched endless above. His final roar echoed across the heavens, a promise and a warning both. He was no species alive, but he was no fossil either. He was Kale, the first dragon of the new age. And the galaxy would never forget him.